What's up guys, and welcome to the 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9 GSR. I haven't driven one of these cars in so long. I think the last Evo I had on my channel must have been 7 to 8 years ago. The owner, Dustin, actually bought this car just a few months ago. It has 94,000 miles on it. It's almost bone stock. It just has some lowering springs from the previous owner, and it has a JDM rear bumper. So the Lancer Evo was always about being that rally car for the road. And this Evo 9 brought a couple of upgrades over the previous generation Evo 8. This is still powered by the 4G63 engine. It's a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder. For the Evo 9 generation, Mitsubishi added MyVec, or variable valve timing, to give it roughly a 10 horsepower bump, meaning this car has 287 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. For 2006 standards, that is quite a lot of power and torque for a little 4-cylinder. This car weighs just under 3,300 pounds. We have hydraulic power steering, and of course it's all-wheel drive. And this has the ACD, or active center differential, and the associated button here, which, contrary to popular belief, does not send different amounts of torque to the rear axle. Actually, what this ACD button does is allow you to select between 3 different preset modes: tarmac, gravel, and snow. And what it actually adjusts is both the timing and the actual lockup amount of that center differential. So in tarmac mode, assuming you're on a dry and grippy surface, it'll lock up that differential earlier and harder based on a number of sensors, including your steering angle, your throttle input, wheel speed sensors, and then as you select the lower grip surfaces for the ACD, it'll wait longer and lock up less. The idea is to give you as much grip and traction as possible. Now that I think about it, I might have gotten the behavior of the ACD between the 3 different modes in reverse. I'm sure one of you in the comments can let me know how it actually works, but needless to say, for someone who's not an engineer, all I know is I'm gonna select the mode that matches the surface that we're on. So it's going to be tarmac today. Also, we're on just some Michelin Pilot Sport all-season tires, which actually isn't a bad choice given that we're on a damp surface. All right, let's take the Evo 9 GSR for a drive. We have a 5-speed manual transmission, not the 6-speed of the MR version. And Dustin mentioned that these cars go for anywhere around 30 to 35,000 for basically a stock or close to stock example with relatively low miles. If you're looking at sub 100k miles, you're probably looking at high 20s to low 30s. First impressions of the interior, very bare bones. I actually really love this steering wheel. It's a Momo unit from the factory, and it has a relatively small diameter and a thin rim, which is great. 3-spoke, very lightweight, and I suspect this is going to improve the steering feel coming through from those front tires. Now, Dustin obviously did add an infotainment system here, but other than that, this interior is very bare bones. It feels like a $15,000 to $20,000 economy car interior from that era, and that's because it is. And at sub 3,300 pounds, it's relatively lightweight for a turbocharged sedan with all-wheel drive. And of course, we have these lovely Recaro seats, really excellent bolstering for your back, but very little bolstering for your thighs. I wish there was a little bit more. The seating position is definitely a couple of inches too high. Manual parking brake, gotta love that. Into first gear. Second gear. Right away, this thing, it just gets up and goes. This must have felt rapid back in 2006. 7,000 RPM red line. There's definitely some turbo lag, but once you get this engine on oil, it is impressive, even by modern standards. The brake pedal is very firm. It doesn't have a lot of travel, which is interesting. It's so different from a lot of cars from this era. Oh yes. Very light and darty steering. but it doesn't feel nervous. You can very accurately place the front end of this car. And there's quite a good amount of feedback about the road surface coming through that wheel. Easy to heel toe. Going into corners, this car feels light. Even with these relatively low grip tires, the car loves to turn. Wow. I remember being absolutely blown away by the first Evo that I drove. That was on a different road, and I had much less experience with other cars at that time. But even after all these years, jumping into an Evo IX again, in a basically bone stock one at that, it's a shockingly good car to drive. It's so capable. So first gear pull. Wow, very short second gear. Actually, all the gears are pretty close together with the exception of fifth. Dustin mentioned that at 80 miles an hour in fifth gear, this engine spins at around 4,000 RPM. So not exactly tuned for efficiency, but that was never the point of the Evo. It really is a rally car for the road, and it's doing such a good job out here. I wish this brake pedal was better though. Not the brake pedal itself, but the brakes. They don't inspire a ton of confidence. Wow, but this all-wheel drive system definitely does. You can just turn it into a corner and immediately get back on the throttle. Don't have to wait for it at all. You can be so aggressive with your throttle inputs and the car just takes it. Virtually no understeer. Some gravel on the road. This car wouldn't care though. This all-wheel drive system just claws for traction. It's hilarious, but this brake pedal is not feeling too great. I think we may need maybe just an OEM brake replacement with some better pads and fluid. It still feels firm, but the stopping power is slowly degrading here. Look at that. Basically full effort or full pressure on that pedal to get stopped. Let's let it cool down a bit. Other than that, oh my goodness, this car is good to drive. There's just so much traction and it just inspires so much confidence. And the car, despite weighing almost 3,300 pounds, it feels light. It feels like a 3,000 pound car. I absolutely love this steering wheel. It really does communicate so much through this wheel because it's such a lightweight, simple design. Those heavy steering wheels we get nowadays really do mute a lot of that information. Not to mention EPS racks versus this old school, at this point, hydraulic steering rack, which just has more feedback. Also, this 5-speed manual, love how short the gear ratios are, from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. The RPMs only drop a couple thousand during the upshift. And the shift feel itself is really excellent as well. Gonna take it a little easy on the downhill because of these brakes. But look at this, the car just eats up these corners. No drama. Oh yeah. So easy to heel toe. Good throttle response for a turbocharged engine. This is a timeless car. It really is. In terms of the driving dynamics, it is fantastic. And it was one of the first all-wheel drive cars that I can remember, at least, that offered truly clever all-wheel drive technology that makes the car feel less burdensome compared to some of the previous generation all-wheel drive performance cars. This ACD really does do wonders. And in tarmac mode, it really limits the amount of understeer while giving us the full benefit of all-wheel drive traction. one more straight line pull before we wrap up here. There's some lag. Love those short gear ratios. Then you shift into fifth and all of a sudden the RPMs drop like 3,000 RPM. And you know what? I like it that way. I want the actual usable gears when performance driving to be very close together in a car like this. And as for fifth gear, I'm never gonna use that on the track or on a canyon road. So make it tall. Give me that little bit of extra fuel economy and reduce the NVH when I'm just cruising on the highway. It's perfect. And look at this, it's easy to drive. The suspension's pretty stiff. It's a bit on the harsher side for OEM suspension. Granted, I don't know how much of that is due to the lowering springs, but this is the way it should be. It should be firm, it should be controlled. This suspension gives us the ability to have the car react quickly to our inputs. That's what we want. It's not meant to be a luxury sedan or a Grand Touring sports car. This is a rally car for the road. It's supposed to feel sharp, and this car feels sharp in every single way, except for the brakes. But again, I suspect that's because it just hasn't been maintained. Evo IX GSR. Honestly, when Dustin first told me this car would go for around $30,000 to $35,000, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money for a nearly 20-year-old car with a bargain basement interior and a little 4-cylinder engine. But now that I've driven it, I'm reminded just by how much value you're actually getting from a driving pleasure perspective, and the all-weather capability, and the fact that you have a usable back seat. It really is such a great all-around package, as long as you're okay with the economy car, you could argue, looks and interior here. So big shout out to Dustin for letting me review this 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9 GSR. It is one of the best all-wheel drive cars I have ever driven. Between this and the R35 GTR, and maybe that modified WRX STI that I drove a while back, and of course the GR Corolla, those really do sit near the top of my ranking list of all-wheel drive cars. Oh, and I guess the Audi R8, although that barely counts because it's a supercar. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this Evo. Did the later Evo X prove to be an even more special driving experience, or might this Evo IX just be the sweet spot in the Evo lineup? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.